Rachel always believed she had married the right man, the kind of man most women dream about. Daniel wasn't just a good husband, he was dependable, solid, the kind of man who made life feel safe. For 18 years, they built something steady, a partnership founded on love, mutual respect, and effort. He wasn't the type to bury himself in work and ignore the home. If anything, he made an art of being present. Daniel helped with chores, scheduled family outings, never missed a birthday or anniversary, and somehow always had enough energy left to pull off thoughtful surprises after a long workday. He'd send texts from the office just to ask if Rachel needed anything, or to say he loved her. Small things, but steady things, the kind of gestures that made her feel seen. On every wedding anniversary, he planned something special. Fresh flowers never stopped arriving, and his love never felt like it needed a reason to show up. He paid the bills, kept the house in order, and did so without a hint of resentment. Rachel never had to wonder if she could count on him. She always could. They had their ups and downs, sure. No long-term marriage is free of tension. But they pushed through each rough patch and came out stronger. They built a beautiful home, raised well-rounded kids, and enjoyed the kind of financial stability that many couples only dream of. From the outside, and even from within, life looked good. But as time passed, something changed subtly, quietly. What once felt like excitement slowly morphed into habit. Dinners blurred together, weekends lost their charm, and Rachel began to question things. Not out loud, not dramatically. But inside her, something stirred. She started catching her own reflection and wondering where the fire had gone. Her routine, once a comfort, now felt like a box closing in. She had everything, and yet, something still felt missing. A kind of restlessness had crept in, one she couldn't explain. It was in the middle of this quiet inner storm that life threw a curveball. Her younger sister, Monica, showed up one day, eyes swollen, voice shaking, suitcase in hand. Her marriage had ended. She had nowhere else to go. Without hesitation, Rachel opened her door and her life to her sister. After all, family is family. She didn't ask questions. She didn't pass judgment. Even when she learned the reason behind Monica's breakup, infidelity, that alone was serious enough. But it was only the beginning. For Rachel, hearing about her sister's infidelity was like swallowing shards of glass. It didn't sit right with her. Not because she wanted to judge, she'd always believed in compassion, but because Rachel had spent her whole life standing firm against that kind of betrayal. Still, she didn't say a word of criticism. Instead, she chose to be the sister Monica needed, shelter in the storm. In those first few days, Monica looked like a shadow of herself. She cried endlessly, curled up on the couch or hiding in the guest room. She spoke in broken sentences, full of regret and confusion. "I ruined everything," she'd say. "It's all my fault." Rachel listened patiently, offering warm tea, a hand on her back, soft reassurances that things would be okay. She even tucked her sister in like a child one night, brushing the hair from her forehead, whispering, "You'll figure this out." But the brokenness didn't last long. By the end of the first week, Monica started to shift. She wore makeup again. Her clothes changed, tighter jeans, fresh blouses. Her voice returned to its usual confident rhythm. And with it came her opinions, unfiltered, dressed in the casual tone of a friend who meant well but always knew better. She'd lean against the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, and toss off phrases like, "Abby, don't you ever get tired of doing everything for everyone else?" Or, "You've been the perfect wife for what, 2 decades? Don't you think it's time to do something just for you?" At first, Rachel brushed them off. But the comments didn't stop. They came with a smile, a chuckle, a nudge, as if they were harmless observations. "Your husband, yeah, he's a great guy. But when was the last time you felt desired? Not appreciated, desired." Then she'd sip her coffee and walk away, leaving Rachel with a silence that echoed long after. The seed had been planted. Each time Rachel looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who used to laugh louder, dance more freely, who used to wear red lipstick just because. Now she saw a mother, a wife, a woman who lived on autopilot. And the more Monica spoke, the more Rachel began to wonder, had she lost herself? It didn't matter that Daniel was still doing all the right things. He hadn't changed. He still made her coffee, still kissed her on the forehead, still asked how her day was. But her lens had changed. And when your thoughts begin to shift, even the most familiar love can start to feel unfamiliar. Monica, meanwhile, moved around the house like she'd never left. She laughed easily, shared stories about dates she'd been on years ago, hinted at new possibilities, always dropping just enough to spark curiosity. She never told Rachel to stray. No, she was too clever for that. Instead, she lit a match, then left the room. And every night, as Daniel kissed Rachel goodnight and rolled over beside her, she found herself staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was still the woman she once wanted to be, or just the one she became out of habit. When are you going to truly live? That line came like a dart, wrapped in a casual smile, tossed across the kitchen counter one morning while Rachel poured coffee into her favorite mug, the one Daniel bought her on their anniversary trip to Asheville. At first, she responded with a tight, uneasy smile, the kind people give when they're trying to keep the peace. She didn't want to argue, didn't want to invite a deeper conversation. But Monica didn't need an invitation. She made herself right at home inside Rachel's head. It didn't matter how many times Rachel tried to brush those comments off. They stuck, like splinters under the skin. And no matter how much she told herself not to listen, the words burrowed deeper every day, slipping into the cracks of quiet moments where insecurity lives. Monica wasn't subtle anymore. Her tone had sharpened, her suggestions more aggressive. She'd lean in at breakfast with that conspiratorial voice and say things like, "Remember Kim, our cousin?" She ditched that stale life, husband, routine, all of it, and now she's in Greece, sipping wine, glowing like a teenager. She'd throw up her hands like she was revealing a universal truth. That's what living looks like, Abby. Not waiting around to see if the laundry's folded right or if your husband remembered the trash. At first, Rachel would counter softly. But Kim left behind a daughter. She only sees her once a month now. Is that really living? Monica's response came without hesitation. It's better than teaching your daughter to settle. Kim finally chose herself. That was Monica's favorite theme, choosing yourself. She wove it into everything. Whether they were stuck in traffic or chopping vegetables, she'd find a way to drop another seed. You've spent 18 years being everything to everyone. When are you going to be something for yourself? Those conversations bled into every corner of Rachel's day. She couldn't sit in the quiet anymore without hearing her sister's voice echoing in her mind. She'd fold towels and wonder if her life had really become just this, a cycle of chores and comfort. She'd watch Daniel stir sugar into her tea and feel the sting of doubt. Had she confused stability with joy? Security with happiness? And when she pushed back, when she said Daniel had always been attentive, generous, the kind of husband most women dream of, Monica would tilt her head, smirk, and fire back. Yeah, he's good. But since when does good enough mean you stop living? Rachel didn't have an answer for that. Not a real one. Not anymore. She told herself she was just tired. That this was a phase, a fog she'd walk through. But deep down, she knew something had shifted. Her heart, once anchored, now drifted a little each day. And the most dangerous part? She was starting to believe her sister might be right. That maybe, just maybe, she did deserve more. You deserve to feel again what it's like to be desired, to be seen, to be admired. That line came with the usual flair Monica carried, half compliment, half challenge, like she was holding up a mirror and daring Rachel to admit she didn't recognize her reflection anymore. She didn't say it with anger. No, Monica's words always came draped in warmth, like honey laced with poison. That was her way. You look in the mirror and see who? A wife? A housewife? A woman who let time swallow who she really was. And then one morning, not long after one of those conversations, Monica appeared in Rachel's bedroom door with a playful smirk and her car keys swinging in her hand. "Abby, come on," she said. "Let's just get out. Coffee. A chat. Just you and me. Fresh air." Rachel hesitated, standing there in her slippers with a laundry basket at her feet. Something inside her wanted to say no. But something else, a new voice, quieter but growing, wanted to say yes. She set the basket down. "All right," she said. "Just for a little while." They drove off like teenagers skipping school, laughing at nothing, talking about old memories and silly things. And for a while, it felt light. It felt good. Monica was good at that, pulling people into her orbit, making everything seem harmless. Then, somewhere past the edge of town, her tone shifted. "You know," Monica said, her eyes on the road, "there's this place I know. It's peaceful. Up in the mountains. Not a regular coffee shop, more like a retreat. You'll love it." Rachel looked out the window. Trees began to replace buildings. The air grew quieter. "Just trust me," Monica added, smiling. Rachel didn't answer, But she didn't protest either. She just watched as the road wound higher, the world slipping further behind them. When Monica finally parked the car, Rachel knew this wasn't just some quiet little cafe. It was a cabin. Remote. Modest. Tucked between trees like it was meant to be hidden. And standing at the door were two men. They smiled as if they'd been expecting them. One gave Monica a light hug. The other nodded at Rachel like she was already part of something. Rachel's stomach knotted. She turned to Monica, her voice quiet. "What is this?" Monica leaned in, her breath warm on Rachel's ear. "Relax. They're friends. Good guys. No pressure." But that smile, a half dare, half seduction, spoke louder than words. Rachel's heart thudded in her chest. She felt like running and staying all at once. Her body was tense, rigid with fear. But then came the whisper, that slow, creeping whisper planted by weeks of doubt. Maybe this is what you need. Maybe this is how you start feeling alive again. So she stepped inside. And in that moment, crossing the threshold of the cabin, Rachel felt something inside her shift. It was like she had left her old world behind and walked into another one, quieter, darker, and dangerous in a way she couldn't yet name. Monica was completely at ease, like she'd done this 100 times before. Her laughter echoed off the cabin walls as she chatted away with the two men like it was just another lazy afternoon. One of them popped open a beer and handed it to her. The other leaned back in his chair, flashing a grin that made Rachel's skin crawl. They joked loudly, talked about nonsense, and kept shooting glances at Rachel, long ones, direct ones, the kind that didn't leave room for misunderstanding. Rachel stayed stiff. She crossed her arms, avoided their eyes, and checked her watch more than once, pretending she had somewhere to be. She mumbled something about needing to leave soon, about having kids, a husband, a life waiting at home. Monica chuckled. "Relax, Abby. It's just some drinks, some fun conversation. No one's dragging you into anything." But that wasn't true, not really. The air was thick. The pressure didn't come with demands. It came with subtle cues, with laughs, with the slow, creeping spin of the world when the alcohol kicked in. And before Rachel could pull herself out, she was being drawn in. The taller one, Tony, she thought his name was, offered his hand, smiling like he knew something she didn't. She should have pulled away. But her hand lifted. She should have stood up. But her legs didn't move. And somewhere between the guilt and the rush, Rachel gave in. Just once, she told herself. Just a moment to forget. A mistake she'd lock away forever. But when it was over, when she slipped her clothes back on and sat on the edge of that creaky bed, all the lies she'd just told herself shattered. The silence in that room was deafening. Monica was already out by the fire pit, talking like nothing happened. The men didn't look back. And Rachel, she felt hollow. The next morning, she woke up in her own bed beside Daniel. He was snoring softly, arm draped over her waist. She stared at the ceiling, hoping she could rewind time, erase it all. But time doesn't rewind. So she did what people do when they're afraid of losing everything. They pretend. She kissed him good morning, made pancakes, folded laundry, asked how his meeting went. But inside, she was crumbling. That one night clawed at her brain like a ghost she couldn't shake. And she told herself, it's over. It won't happen again. No one will ever know. But secrets have a way of scratching at doors. It was a quiet Wednesday night. Daniel was scrolling through his phone in the living room. News. Sports. Half listening to the hum of the TV. And then voices. He paused. The guest room door was slightly cracked. Monica was inside, talking on the phone. Her voice was low, but clear enough to carry. In one sentence, one slip, shattered everything. Rachel didn't say a word. She didn't beg, didn't scream, didn't throw herself into a whirlwind of excuses. She just stared at him, wide-eyed, lips trembling, hands clasped like a child caught red-handed. And maybe she realized, finally, there were no words left that could undo what she'd done. Daniel stood slowly. Every movement felt heavy, like dragging chains behind him. He didn't yell. He didn't lash out. The pain inside him was far quieter and far more lethal. "I want you both out by morning," he said, voice low, steady. "You can take whatever you need. But I want this house clean of lies. Of poison." Rachel's breath hitched. "Daniel, please, let me explain." He cut her off with a single glance. "No. You had your moment to explain. Back there. In that cabin." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing into her hands, the kind of cry that comes too late to matter. Meanwhile, Daniel walked out of the room without looking back. His chest burned, but his mind was clear for the first time in days. That night, he didn't sleep in their bed. He slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding in his ears, with images he wished he could erase looping in his mind. The sound of Monica's voice. The truth he never asked for. The woman he thought he knew, handing herself over to some stranger in a mountain cabin while he stayed home planning a weekend getaway for their anniversary. By morning, the house was silent. Rachel and Monica were gone. No note. No final words. Good. Daniel made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and watched the sun rise. And somewhere between the bitter sip and the warming light through the blinds, he told himself something that would become his anchor in the storm ahead. This is not my ending. This is where I start over. Rachel stood there, stunned, her chest rising and falling as if her lungs were working overtime just to keep her upright. The word divorce echoed in her mind like a hammer smashing through every illusion she'd clung to. She wanted to scream, to collapse to the floor, to go back in time and rip that moment at the cabin out of existence. But there was no going back. Not from this. Daniel didn't raise his voice. That's what made it worse. The cold clarity with which he spoke meant he was beyond anger now, beyond negotiation. It wasn't rage, it was resolve. I'll talk to the kids, he repeated. You'll tell them nothing. Not yet. You've done enough. Rachel felt the walls closing in, her home turning into a stranger's house in real time. This wasn't her place anymore. Her own husband, no, her ex-husband, was now someone she couldn't reach, someone she'd hurt beyond what words could touch. And she had no one to blame but herself. Upstairs, Monica was shoving clothes into a bag, her usual sass now completely stripped away. She muttered something under her breath, a weak attempt at defending herself, but Rachel didn't even respond. She was too far gone to waste energy on someone who helped destroy everything she had. When the bags were packed, the sisters walked downstairs, silent, awkward, like prisoners being escorted to the gate. The kids were at school. Thank God for that. Daniel waited by the front door, arms crossed, jaw tight, his entire being radiating control, barely holding the pieces of his life together while shoving out the parts that had shattered it. Rachel turned to him one last time, tears streaming now, eyes pleading. Daniel, I'm sorry. I was lost. But he raised a hand, not in violence, just in finality. Stop. You were found. You made choices. Now live with them. That moment was final. No hugs. No drama. No last kiss. Just a door opening. And closing. She and Monica walked to the car, their bags in hand, their heads low. And as they pulled away from the house, the street they once called home fading in the rearview mirror, Rachel felt something far worse than pain. She felt absence. The void that follows a betrayal so deep, it leaves a crater where love used to live. Daniel, meanwhile, stood in the quiet of his hallway, hands on his hips, heart pounding. He didn't cry. He didn't punch a wall. He just walked slowly to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and sat at the table. Then he did the one thing that told him life was still his to live. He opened his laptop, opened a new folder, and began searching for the best family lawyers in town. Because if they thought this was the end, they were wrong. It was just the beginning of a very long reckoning. Monica walked a few paces ahead, keys clutched in her hand, but her usual confidence was gone. Each step felt heavier than the last. Rachel lagged behind, staring down at the suitcase wheels scraping across the pavement like echoes of everything she'd just lost. When they reached the door, Monica paused. She didn't knock. She didn't reach for the handle. She stood there, shoulders hunched, breathing shallow. Rachel moved up beside her, eyes wide with dread, and whispered, "Do we even tell her everything?" Monica shook her head. "What choice do we have?" A few seconds passed before Monica knocked. Their mother opened the door, her face brightening for just a split second before her eyes settled on the luggage and the weight both women carried on their faces. The smile faded instantly. "What happened?" she asked, voice laced with concern. Rachel opened her mouth, but couldn't find her voice. She felt 12 years old again, standing in front of the principal's office after doing something awful. Her mother stepped aside, letting them in with a look that said she'd get answers one way or another. Inside, the air was warm, familiar, and stifling. The same house where they'd grown up now felt like a courtroom, and Rachel was walking in as the accused. Their mother brought tea, sat them on the couch, and waited, until Monica, wiping her eyes with the back of her sleeve, finally muttered, "We messed up." Rachel couldn't take it anymore. Her chest caved, and she began sobbing. "I lost my family, Mom. I lost my husband. I destroyed everything." Their mother looked between them, horror slowly overtaking confusion. What do you mean?" Rachel couldn't look her in the eye. "I cheated. I let Monica drag me into someplace, some version of myself I don't even recognize anymore. And now Daniel knows. He kicked us out." The room went silent. No birds chirping. No cars outside. Just three women in a living room drenched in a silence that bordered on judgment. Their mother, stoic as ever, stood and walked to the window. For a full minute, she said nothing. Then, without turning, she said, "I raised you to be better than this." The words hit like a hammer. Not shouted, not angry, just disappointed. And that, somehow, was worse. "I opened my doors because I thought my daughters needed a place to breathe, not because I expected to shelter betrayal and shame under my roof." Monica tried to speak, but their mother held up a hand. "I don't need excuses. I don't want to hear another word tonight." She walked down the hall, paused at the guest room door, and added over her shoulder, "You can stay. But don't mistake shelter for approval. You'll both have to live with what you've done." She closed the door behind her, leaving Rachel and Monica in that quiet living room where the walls felt tighter than ever. Neither of them spoke again that night. Because when even your own mother can't look at you the same, you know you've really lost everything. Monica gripped her suitcase, her knuckles turning white as if holding on would keep her fearless mask from cracking. But inside, she was breaking. Exactly 2 years ago, the same front door had looked down on a very different scene. Then, their mother, still mourning her husband, stood behind it, fiercely disapproving as always. A woman of few words, she didn't mince them. Monica's wild, spontaneous life had always been her target. That day, amid tears and frustrations, words were hurled like insults, reckless, disgrace, irresponsible. Rachel had stood up for Monica, they had argued in coarse tones, and eventually, the clash ended in broken bridges. No calls, no holidays, no contact, all had been cut off. 2 years of silence, of absence, even birthdays were skipped. And now, here they were again, two women in defeat, back at the door they once stormed away from. When the door opened, their mother didn't hesitate. No tearful embrace, no questions. She just crossed her arms and said, in a voice both cold and resentful, "So, it happened, didn't it? Just like I warned." The words were sharp, final. Rachel and Monica let their heads drop. Each step inside pulled them deeper into shame. Their mother closed the door behind them and took a single stance at the top of the stairs, a silent sentinel of judgment. The divorce had been finalized. Daniel had since signed papers. Their marriage, once a life, now existed only in legal documents. Daniel had said his final goodbye, and that should have been the end. But one crisp morning, just hours before everything became official, the most surprising knock came at his own front door. He opened it to find Monica standing there, backlit by the morning sun. Gone were her defiant eyes, replaced with vulnerability he had never seen. She clutched a small manila envelope, her hands trembling. Daniel regarded her with tension tight around his jaw, but something in her shaky posture gave him pause. "Monica," he said, his voice quiet and guarded. "What are you doing here?" She swallowed hard, eyes flicking away. I know I don't deserve anything. But in a few hours, it's over. Rachel's going to leave. The papers are signed." Her voice cracked. She extended the envelope. "I found something in my things. Something that I think you're supposed to see before you make everything final." Daniel stared at the envelope, weighing her hesitation, the tremor in her voice. "You have 5 minutes," he said. Monica nodded. He stepped aside. Inside, the envelope looked mundane. Loose papers, a few printed emails, maybe a photo. But Daniel's heart thudded with the realization. One question loomed in his mind. What if Monica still held the key to saving the pieces he wasn't ready to lose? Monica exhaled slowly, the weight of her own words pressing on her chest like stones. "I'm not here for excuses," she began, her voice low and raw. "I'm here because I need to own what I did. All of it." She didn't dance around the truth. No soft language, no padding to ease the blow. She said it straight. Everything that happened was her fault. The so-called coffee trip? A lie. The idea of clearing Rachel's mind? A cover. From the moment she suggested the outing, it had been a setup. She admitted that she had planned the entire afternoon. She had chosen the cabin, invited the two men, told them exactly what kind of encounter it would be, and still, she brought her sister along without a single word of honesty. Daniel didn't blink. "I thought I was doing something good," Monica continued, her voice cracking. "I thought I was showing her that life wasn't just folding laundry and watching clocks, that she still had power in her hands. But I see now. I wasn't trying to help her. I was projecting my own mess onto her life." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she confessed she had been the architect of it all. The ideas, the pressure, the teasing words masked as encouragement. "I pushed her. And when she gave in, I saw it. That I hadn't liberated her. I had broken her." Monica paused, wiped her face, then said the one thing Daniel didn't expect. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I know I probably don't deserve that. But I needed you to know, Rachel didn't walk into that with full awareness. She was dragged." Silence fell thick and bitter between them. Daniel stood there, his arms crossed, expression unreadable. Monica waited, bracing for a response, a reaction, maybe even a shout. But when he spoke, it wasn't with rage. It wasn't even with sorrow. He said, "Look, Monica, you could have taken her anywhere. That part doesn't matter. What matters is that she went, that she got in that car, that when she saw the cabin, the men, she didn't walk away." He uncrossed his arms, took a step forward. His tone was calm, but sharp like a scalpel. "No one holds someone's hand and forces them to cheat. That doesn't come from outside. That comes from something already broken inside." Monica's lips quivered. She turned her face slightly, as if shielding herself from the weight of his words. But he wasn't finished. She knew. The moment she stepped out of that car, she knew. And from that second on, it was no longer about your influence. It was about her choices. Monica didn't argue. She just nodded, slowly, as the last pieces of her pride collapsed inside her. She turned toward the door, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and walked away without a word. And Daniel, still standing there in the quiet of his home, once full of warmth and laughter, let out a long breath, one that carried every ounce of the weight he'd been holding. There were no victors in betrayal, only survivors.